What I learned in life is that you can have a cause, but you can work your social consciousness through your job. Never let the job work you. You work the job.
His goal, to be an agent of social change through medicine and education.
If you give me high school, you can have all the things in life that you need. And if you're willing to go and get a little more education or another skill, you can have some of the things in life that you want.
On this episode of Let's Talk Cincy, up close with Dr. Odell Owens.
You can't pick your tragedies.
From WLWT, this is Let's Talk Cincy, presented by Western and Southern Financial Group. Put our financial strength behind you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Curtis Fuller, and welcome to Let's Talk Cincy. Today, a revealing one-on-one conversation with a pioneer in medicine and a great living Cincinnatian, Dr. Odell Owens. Few people can match the career accomplishments of Dr. Owens, whose work is recognized around the world. He announced his retirement after an amazing career in health and public service that has spanned nearly 50 years. Today, let's talk to Dr. Odell Owens.
I've always decided that when that time came to retire, I wanted to be able to do that because I want to, not because I have to. But it's a combination of things. My daughter was very upset because she said to me, "Daddy, I haven't hugged you in almost a year because of COVID." And she was really impacted by that. And then you look at COVID and you look at the stories on the evening news of young people, 35, healthy, 20, 30, 40, 50, dying of COVID. And, you begin to think, where do I want to be? I've always said to people, I've worked in the community, yet I always wonder, have I done enough? Have I done enough? And so it just came to a point that said, yes, you have. And it's time to take care of Odell.
Dr. Odell Owens is the epitome of success. His resume includes college president, Hamilton County coroner, Cincinnati Health Commissioner, president and CEO of one of the area's largest health foundations. And he also established an in vitro fertilization program, achieving Cincinnati's first successful conception and delivery, as well as the first pregnancy from a frozen embryo.
What I want my resume to really reflect, and the message of my resume, is that in the 9th grade, I was told by a college counselor after flunking out of Walnut Hills that I was too poor and too dumb to go to college, and for me to take classes in shop. That's what I want young kids to understand, that no one should put you in a box. No one should write you off. The fact that I've been involved in medicine, education, variety of other things, because Odell got educated. And that's the message I wanted young kids to have. Curtis, my involvement in the community was never from an oath or a pledge. It's from a promise to my heart. That kid that came from the West End that had nothing, hit rock bottom. When I flunked out of Walnut Hills, my family was rock bottom. And yet, I've gotten some modicum of success because people helped me. And I never gave up my faith that I wanted to go to college. I didn't want to be poor in the West End. I seen that life. I didn't want that. And I know some people say, "Oh, people should never talk about money." No, I'm sorry. When I was poor and down and out, man, yes, that's what I want. I wanted what they had, what I could see on TV, what I could read about in the newspaper. There's nothing wrong in telling kids, if that's what you want, but you got to earn it. It's not going to fall up on the table for you. You got to go out and earn it. Get that degree. No one can take that. Second part of my resume, I want people to know I'm not the diamond in the rough. I am the rough.
He's taken his message about education to classrooms and to crime-filled streets.
Because I knew, and when I got to the coroner's office, indeed, the majority of the shooters didn't finish high school, and the majority of the victims didn't finish high school. And studies have shown that if you raise your graduation rate just 10%, you lower your felonious assault and homicides by 20%. So it became a pulpit, but I also wanted to change the coroner's office from being about death to about life. And when I tell young people all the time, how can calculus or physics been tough when you live the life that you've lived? When you've gone days without eating, you may not have electricity, you may not have the best of clothes, you had no love at your house, you were teased, you cried at night. How can anything that a teacher put in front of you be hard when you've already had that? I've always told young people, never let your past dictate your future, but always make it a part of you. And that's what I've used. I've used my past to be a part of me. And so I had those tough times at Yale or Harvard. Nah, can't be. I've already been there. This isn't going to be hard.
Dr. Owens' mother died when he was only 11 years old. His mother was only 29. His message has always been about overcoming many obstacles. In the words of Nelson Mandela, after climbing a great hill, one only finds that there are many more hills to climb.
I was the first African American to chair the board of UC, first African American to do a fellowship in reproductive endocrinology at Harvard, first African American to be on a major bank board when it was Star Bank and now US Bank, and then I turned out to be the longest running director at US Bank. I just retired off that board last year. So, it's been, I think sometimes people say, think when you're the first, you pay a price.
Up next, Dr. Owens talks about being better just to be equal. But first, a frank conversation about the devastating COVID-19 pandemic that has consumed our world for more than a year and his thoughts about getting back to normal when Let's Talk Cincy continues. The pandemic has taken a toll on all of us. In fact, Dr. Owens admits the pandemic was a factor in his decision to step down and retire and to spend more time with his family. He has been an important voice in helping to educate the public about COVID-19, from testing to protocols, and now the truth about the vaccines.
The other day I told someone, I've gotten both of my shots. Now, I may die of many things, but since I've been vaccinated, I will not be dying of COVID. I'm not going to be a COVID death. And I got that second shot, Curtis, and I felt free. I felt something got lifted from me. Still got to wear my mask, still got to wash my hands, still got to recognize physical distancing, but I knew I'm not going to die.
Do you understand why people are reluctant, though?
They are, and I understand that they think this is the speed. But again, what they have to realize is that the technology to create the messenger RNA has been going on for 20 years. They have worked with this with some other vaccines. With rabies was one, but didn't have a big enough trial for it to come forward. You have to test this on large numbers of people. So this was the first time they could use this technology in large groups. So even though it was fast, there were no shortcuts. Now, the piece that we do lag, and I understand, is that we're lagging on understanding the long-term effects. But we don't have 2 years. It's about a risk and benefit. If we waited 2 years and you already had 500,000 people die, in 1918 the Spanish flu killed 25 million people worldwide, we couldn't wait. So it was a risk and benefit. So, and the short term show all the tests that it was safe and effective. I know when I talk to African Americans who say, yeah, but we've been guinea pigs and done this. I look at them and I quote Amanda Gorman, who spoke at the inauguration, who said, when you're facing your future, don't let your past stand in front of you. God, she was powerful. And it was appropriate at the moment. Come on, we got a technology, take it. Protect your loved one, protect yourself, protect the people that you love. Get the vaccine. The number of flu deaths average between 40 to 100,000 any given year. And we accepted that. Now today, we would no longer accept 100,000 people dying of the flu. And for two reasons. One, the flu incidents and deaths were down 98% because of hand washing, wearing a mask, and 6 feet of distancing. So we know we can deal with that. So I think at the beginning, we all kind of thought, oh, this is going to be short term. Everybody got shut down for 3 weeks. We figured after the 3 weeks, everybody's going to come back to work and business as usual. And that just didn't happen. So it really, for modern medicine, this is unusual because everything else we could take care of very quickly. But this we weren't prepared for. Maybe couldn't be prepared for. But I think now we are. I think we understand what kind of infrastructure we need. We understand what kind of messaging we need. And we understand what type of technology is best for us. So we will be better prepared for the next one, and there will be a next one.
Dr. Owens says he knows COVID-19 has caused a lot of stress for people, and folks still have many questions about the vaccines. But he says he hopes he has earned the trust of the public when he says the vaccines are safe and effective in helping keep you and your loved ones healthy. Up next, a raw conversation with Dr. Owens about how success did not shield him from the sting of racism. When Let's Talk Cincy continues. Many will tell you that we are facing another pandemic, one that has infected us for many years, and that's racism. Odell Owens shares some painful realities about his journey and the roads littered with racism.
People always ask about success and about the path and roads that you take. And I've been asked, if you had grown up in a more middle class or in a richer neighborhood, would your path been the same? Not at the same extent, because you may take some things for granted. I had nothing to take for granted. But I was fortunate that the last couple years of high school, my father went to Detroit. My mother had been dead at that point for 8 years. And so my grandmother in Detroit told my father, why don't you move to Detroit with the kids? Odell can finish high school up here and get a good job before it on the line. And that was my destiny. But a family, a black family, that I had been there, I was their babysitter, their grass cutter, their snow removal, their caddy, said, you got potential, and told my father, let Odell stay with us. And he was a physician. She was a social worker. So I got a taste of that life. But however, he was a physician, she's a social worker, her brother's a surgeon like him, his brother is a doctor, his wife's brother's a doctor, all of her brothers and sisters were either PhDs. So I was surrounded by this well-educated family where college was never talked about. It was the next step. So I had a little bit of both worlds, I had a taste of both worlds. But what sustained me was certainly growing up poor. A good part of my life was spent always having to be better just to be equal. When I went to college, the first week, the biology department had a meeting with all the students that wanted to go to medical school to tell them what courses to take, when to take them, when to apply to medical school, what medical schools would take kids from Antioch, and what was your grade point average. And at that time, they said, hey, from Antioch, if you have at least a 3.3, you're going to get into medical school because they respect our curriculum. So as everybody was walking out, and I was the only African American in the room, the professor grabbed my arm and pulled me back into the room and said, of course, you are going to need at least a 3.4 or higher. And some of these schools are not going to take you. So I had to, as a freshman, I had to sit down and actually write out how I wanted to look when I was a senior, how I was going to present myself to medical schools to create this image that they're going to take me because of all the thousands of applications they're going to get. So I said, okay, I'm going to be active on the campus. So I was a DJ, I was involved in committees. I'm going to focus on my grades, so I had a 3.8. I chose to go to Africa my third year of college because I knew that going to Africa, being a student there, was going to help my resume. It wasn't my great power of Africa or black power or any of that during that time period. It was I had to stand out just to be equal. And indeed, when I went for my medical school interviews, they all, oh, you lived in Africa, oh, tell us about that. And I had great stories. So when I get to Yale, it was, oh, are you here because you're black? Or you here because you're smart? Because at that time, Yale had the largest class of black students. There was 7 of us out of 100. So we all felt that. So I said, okay. I went across the street and registered for a master's degree in public health from Yale and did them both at the same time. I was president of my class at Yale, captain of the medical school basketball team, and I was on the board of trustees of Antioch College while I was a medical student. So my attitude was now, okay, either your stuff is raggedy, if I can do all this, or maybe I do have some smarts. But I had to do more just to be equal. When I stayed at Yale and did a 4-year residency in obstetrics and gynecology, at the end of that, I was awarded the Irving Friedman Award as the best chief resident. I leave there and go to Harvard, where I'm the first black to do a fellowship in reproductive endocrinology, and only the second black to do a fellowship within the Department of OBGYN. Once again, I found, are you here because you're smart? Are you here because you're black and we got to meet some type of quota? I got 3 degrees behind me from Yale. And when I was a resident, I was on the executive committee of the Yale Alumni Board. So I was never, ever just a student. And I'm like, and I was the Irving Friedman Award winner. What I got to prove? So one day, the residents came to me and said, hey, one of our fellow residents, a woman, has a pregnancy in her fallopian tube. And that's, well, you have to operate very quickly because if it bursts, you could die. So they said, look, we're concerned that, she's concerned that she's going to have an abdominal incision, the tube is going to remove, it's going to cut down her chances for a future pregnancy with only 1 tube, and she's going to miss 6 to 8 weeks of work. But we know that at Yale, you were taught how to do a procedure through the belly button. They could save her tube, and she'd only miss work for 2 days. Will you operate? I said, I'll do it. Had never been done in Boston, never been done at Harvard. So I go, I operate, save the fallopian tube. She's out of work 2 days. 10 weeks later, we do a dye test, the tube is open. No more questions about Odell Owens. Then my professor was going to, there's two of us that are doing this fellowship. So he's going to teach us how to put fallopian tubes back in women that already had their tubes tied and had changed their mind. You do it under a microscope. If they held the needle here, you couldn't see it. So at Harvard, he's a professor, so he booked a case. It's 5 hours operating room time. I had done it at Yale already. I was the only one that could book 2 in 5 hours. I did 2 while he's doing 1, I was doing 2. He was supposed to be teaching me, but I already learned that procedure. Yeah. So again, I had to be better just to be equal. So I come back home to Cincinnati, all this training behind me, only to have whites walk in the office, see that I was black, and walk out. I was the only reproductive endocrinologist in the city for 3 years. You can't find many with 3 degrees from Yale and 1 from Harvard. May not exist. All those days of staying up, all those surgeries, all those reading, all those passing of all those exams, ready to get back to my city. And people will walk in and say, oh, he's black, and walk out. I even had patients who I helped to get pregnant. And at their last visit, they're going to go now back to their own doctor to be taken care of. They can deliver them. And they were crying. And I said, okay, they're crying because this is emotional. But they were crying because, and they would say to me, Dr. Owens, I feel so guilty. I said, why? Because I saw that you were black, I was going to walk out. But I felt you were my only hope, and I stayed. I hug them. Say, hey, we're a team, don't worry about that. You got your baby, that's all that counts. I had doctors say to me, oh, I'm so glad you got Mrs. Smith pregnant before her husband found out you were black. So, you know, I looked at that, and my office staff used to be very upset when somebody would walk in and walk out. But then I was asked to go to New Haven and be on a TV show by a woman named Sally Jesse Raphael. She started out in New Haven, then her show went to New York. So she brought in 3 doctors, 3 gynecologists, and we were on her show asking questions. So after that, she said, I want you to come back. So over the next 2 years, she would bring me back. And when she walked out, she would say, I hate doctors, but I love this man. Well, when I returned to Cincinnati, my phone was ringing off the hook. People wanted to come all over the country. From the Caribbean, people would come up to see me. Yet in Cincinnati, people wanted to walk out. Until my name got out there and they knew that I was black, and then those people that had that kind of orientation then no longer came to the office. But I told my staff, I said, you know, don't get upset. Because right now, it takes 2 months to get an appointment with me. So why are we going to be upset for someone that wants to walk out? Let us rejoice in the patients who have faith in us. I never let people try to pull me down because I truly embrace my oath as a physician, that I lead with empathy and compassion. Now, you may not be nice to me. You may not want me because I'm black, but I'm gonna take care of you with the same empathy and compassion in my skills as the person who loves me and appreciates me.
We'd like to hear from you. Email us your ideas at ltc@wlwt.com. Remember, you can always watch full episodes or get more information on wlwt.com/Let's Talk Cincy. You can also listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Odell Owens told me he gave 1,000 speeches in 7 years when he was the coroner, everywhere from schools to prisons. Among those many talks he delivered were to future doctors.
And I'm very proud of the fact that another statistic, Curtis, that even you don't know. You know, I worked for the University of Cincinnati for 4 years. But Curtis, for 29 years, I gave the first lecture to the first year students on their first day. 29 years in a row. I've since done it twice more, so I'm up to 31. More than any other person in the history of the medical school to address the freshman class on what it means to be a physician. So even when I left, even when I was a coroner, even when I was president of Cincinnati State, they asked me to come back and talk to medical students. And that's what made me feel so proud that I still connect. And I did it this year as well. And that's important to me, that I've been able to stay relevant. There's that single message through the years still rings. And I tell patients, I tell medical students all the time, you must first care for your patients before you can take care of your patients. And that's how I always end my talks with them.
We wish Dr. Owens much joy in his retirement, but I don't think this is the last time we'll be hearing from him. You know, his story reminds me of a quote from the great soccer player Pele, something we all should think about. He said, "Success is no accident. It takes hard work, perseverance, learning, sacrifice, and most of all, love of what you are doing or learning to do." Well, that does it for this edition of Let's Talk Cincy. Thanks for joining us. I'm Curtis Fuller. Have a nice day.